meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, great. And now, as I alluded to, recognition of facilities staff. Can I turn that over to you, Scott?
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight, what we'd like to do is recognize our facilities staff for their hard work every summer and every day of the school year. It doesn't matter whether it's, many of them drive the bus for us, as well as whether it's emptying a truckload of paper, cleaning the facilities, assembling furniture, making repairs, painting the buildings, just looking at things like setting up for special events. Everything from responding to staff issues during the course of the day to students who are in the building and looking for the lost backpack, to just everything from a day-to-day basis and keeping these facilities clean and ready for the community, students, and staff. So at this point, what I'd like to do is ask each one of the facilities workers to come up as I call their name. And what I'd like to do is just recognize that this is a team that takes pride in making sure that our facilities are ready for everyone, and give them a little recognition tonight for their hard work, especially in light of this past summer when we basically pulled off in about 6 weeks what would normally be a full summer of almost 10 weeks. So it was incredible this year, and we'd like to recognize them. So first, Mary Ann Anthony, and then if you could just stay up here when you come up, please. With me for a minute.
Scott, would you mind if possible, if people just also let us know what school they work in, if they have a primary school, so people can connect that, please?
Absolutely.
Weekend in Greeley Middle School.
Okay. Mark Beckwith. Thanks, Mark. I know that one's MIW.
Yeah. Thanks for the help.
You're welcome. Tom Calder. Tom is out, okay. All right, Justin Chafee. Come on up. Great. You want to talk about which building you're in?
The Greeley High School.
Okay. And Seth Chafee.
I'm at the high school.
And is Frank Coffin here this evening?
Retired bus driver.
Frank was in facilities and retired this year, but we've kept him on driving bus, so thank you, Frank. Okay, and Roger DeHetri?
Mabel I. Wilson.
Sean Ellsworth? Thanks, Sean.
Mabel I. Wilson.
Seth Farrington?
Mabel Wilson.
Don Foster?
I'm just everywhere.
Kevin Foster?
Grounds.
Mike Howard?
Mike is out.
Okay. Jeff King?
Middle school.
Paul Layton?
High school.
Jason Libby?
Middle school.
Lori Libby?
Town Hall.
Denise McKay?
Thank you. Middle school.
Jeff Miller?
Really high school?
Don Moody?
Grounds, all schools.
Basil Morrison.
Bus driver, maintenance.
Jim Murphy.
High school.
Bo Ramsey.
I work in maintenance and bus driver. Thank you.
Richard Riley.
I'm at the middle school.
Claudia Rich Smith.
Greeley Middle School. Thank you.
Carl Rowe.
High school.
Don Sewell. Pam Stone.
Bus driver and MIW.
Tina Valachi.
Bus driver, middle school, and painter in the summer.
Mike Wallace.
West High School.
And finally, at the last of the alphabet, Dan Willerson.
Everywhere I follow Dawn around.
Thank you. So this is our staff that ensures that everything's ready for the start of the school year. It doesn't matter if it's lining the fields, making sure the grounds are ready, cleaning the facilities, and like I said, moving staff from one location to another. This is a staff that pulls it off in the summers, pulls it off during the school year. Please, work with me and congratulate them on a job well done. I think the board might have had some words they wanted to say as well.
I just want to echo what Scott said. I've had a chance to get to know many of you on the facilities crew and just in different areas of the district, and I just want to say thank you very much for everything that you have done, each and every one of you. Your contributions, you're the backbone of the district, and you keep our buildings running and our fields and our grounds, and we really appreciate it. And many of you drive bus as well, so you're doing a lot of different things for our district. And sometimes you're the first and last people that the kids see. You're also the person that sometimes some kids gravitate towards in the building. They need something. They're like, hey, and I see you doing that a lot. You guys are just incredible people, and we are very fortunate to have such an incredible staff in the facilities department. So thank you very much.
And on behalf of the board, I echo that. I think so many of us, when our kids are just embarking upon their first transition, both of the school year and the day, for those bus drivers, your welcoming arms and a friendly smile. And then there are so many little ways that you show how much you care. And sometimes we get focused on the large things that are exciting things like the Performing Arts Center or this incredible project that was pulled off at MIW. But please, even though it might not be said, we are very much aware that the devil's in the details. And that when you are tired, you keep persevering and do it for our community and for our children so they are safe, secure. And so really, on behalf of all of us, thank you so, so much. We really appreciate you. And thank you very much for coming out and letting us tell you thank you to your face. We really are very grateful, especially on a Monday night like tonight. Thank you.
Great. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and move on to presentations. I think our first call to order is going to be, I use these terms, I don't know why, but our first item is the field trip request. So Jason Curry, we look forward to hearing it.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation to come. And they're out of the room, but I would still like to offer my congratulations and applause. 4 of those individuals who were recognized are former students of mine from my classroom in the last 20 years. And if it wasn't for everything they and everyone who trained them and everyone who's worked here has done, then my work would stop at a screeching halt almost immediately. So from windows I leave open overnight, unfortunately, to other things, that they are the absolute core of everything we can do as classroom teachers. So thanks to them. So I'm here tonight with Katie Dexter from the high school, John Lane, one of our athletic coaches. Also, Jeff Masterson, who couldn't be here tonight, is also a proposed chaperone for this trip. This trip is going to be to Europe in June into July of 2018. We're very enthusiastic about this. I have shown in the field trip request form a number of different educational objectives, both from the social studies standards and also some English standards, foreign language department standards, and some of our school's guiding principles, which are state mandated that we're able to show to the Department of Education that our students can meet. And by all means, as the students come through and do this field trip, for example, open-minded towards other cultures and evaluate multiple viewpoints, this can be a portfolio item for our students who want to graduate with the guiding principles here in the district. If they summarize their experience on the trip, make that part of their graduation portfolio for the guiding principles aspect, then it can really be a benefit to the students as well. So the itinerary for the trip is proposed to be June 21st to July 5th. That is several days after the end of the school year. So if we have a lot of school days canceled due to snow, then we will have to try to make alternative arrangements with the teachers to do their final exams, perhaps get them done early. So we would not want snow days to make a student seriously impacted, or a teacher. I'm a classroom teacher. I don't want to see us seriously impacted. So we will advise the students along the way, and especially as we get snow day after snow day, to make proactive arrangements with their teachers for those final exams. I don't know how much of the paperwork that I submitted the members of the board received. There was the 2-page field trip request, but there's also a full packet provided by Explorica, the company that we are going through for this trip. There were many details of insurance and transportation and safety and emergency plans that are covered in the paperwork provided. One thing I will tell you about trip organization, between 2000 and 2007, I ran 7 trips to Europe for Greeley students, 3 trips to Scotland, and 4 trips to the continent, most of which included France and Italy in some capacity, one of which also included Greece and Turkey. So it was a fantastic experience. Every time the students that came back said this was the trip of a lifetime. Several of our former students that we've taken on these trips have ended up working internationally now. They've gone on to be translators in foreign countries. One of them got married in Madrid to a Spaniard when she went and became a translator there and has now moved back. Several others are working for government offices, a couple for the State Department. So I certainly am not going to claim that this trip was a watershed moment in their lives. However, it's another brick in that golden road to being a global citizen. So I'm happy to shut up now and answer any questions you might have. Yes.
We can either, why don't we just ask some questions, and then I'll invite a motion. So if anyone has any thoughts or comments, and then we can take it from there in terms of making a motion. Yep.
So I sound like a broken record every time a field trip request comes. I always ask the same thing. You know, this looks incredible. I wish board members could go. But what are the fundraising things? Like, say there's a student that's identified that this could be a really useful life event for them, but their families can't afford it. Are there mechanisms for that?
There are mechanisms in place. There's some offerings from the Explorica company themselves to set up a web page for that purpose. I've also asked Mr. Lane and also Mr. Masterson to help coordinate a more physical fundraising drive if and when that's called for. In addition to that, there's little perks and benefits that the company gives the organizer as a thank you for doing the organization. And I myself have already contacted the company and asked that in the case of some students or even some of the chaperones that might need a little financial help, that I am able to cash in some of those benefits they offer to me and use that directly to bring down the bills for the students.
Great, thank you.
If you have the high-end problem of having more than 38 students wanting to join, how will you handle that?
That's an excellent question. I have already taken information from a number of students who have expressed interest, and those students' names have been run by Principal McKeown, and also because administrators are sometimes, they can be cloistered in their office and don't get the chance to sometimes see students that need extra attention. I also went to both of our school secretaries and had them look at the list of students, and in all cases they said there's no disciplinary issues here. Any student that wants to come in, I would first review their information with the administrators, the secretaries, to see if there are some behavioral issues that might make them a student that would be a risk to bring to a foreign country. But other than that, I don't have specific criteria at this time for how to make that cutoff.
Okay. All right, great. Karen, did you have a question?
Yeah. What is the end of the school year supposed to be?
The end of the school year is...
Just going to look it up on the district's webpage.
Yeah.
You might know it off the top of your head.
Officially, it's June 18th if we have 5 storm days. So this being the 21st, that does allow us...
So it's June 18th with 5 storm days?
according to the calendar I have in front of me.
We
yeah.
always build them in.
Oh, so then
We build them in.
Okay. All right.
So if we go
then
beyond 5,
you should so you're already planning to be beyond that. Okay, by the 21st. All right, my other question was when, if you have 38 students, the max number of students, you're taking 5 chaperones, 4 chaperones?
actually, that's an interesting scenario because there are 4 male chaperones currently, 3 female chaperones currently, plus there's 1 parent who declined to be a chaperone, but he still wanted to be on the trip, so he plans to attend as well. So there's going to be 7 supervisory adults, which is about a 5-to-1 ratio.
Okay, and all 7 of those adults are willing to be part of the pairs that supervise at night and go around and make sure people are...
Yes.
Okay, because that's
Yep,
the part...
prerequisite.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's the part that worries me.
Yep.
Is, that, you know, when kids are, have too much time on their hands. It doesn't look like they'll have any time on their hands according to this. But usually it's at the end of the evening, and so I just want to make sure that you're expecting 2 people to
Absolutely. Every
count,
night in rotation. Yep.
to make, and you think that's enough to keep track of 36, 38 kids?
Given the fact that they're going to be in specific wings and that they can walk back and forth up and down the wing, I think that'll be enough to do it per night.
Okay, and do you travel on your own tour because you have such a large number? Is it just you, or are there other groups with?
That is dependent upon the company. If we can fill a bus, so to speak, they won't take a small school group from another state. and add it to us. And that's why I set the bar where I did, because I'm hoping that we can have enough to make it just perfect so that it's Greeley's trip and Greeley's alone. On some of those other 7 trips in the past, we've been the tiny school that's been added into 40-something kids from some other state, and we've been the big school and they've taken 5 kids and a chaperone from somewhere else. It tends to add to confusion, especially when their kids and our kids socialize in ways that their chaperones might be okay with and we're not so fond of.
Right. Then I saw one other thing, and I can't remember where I saw it, but it said like there's a fee for stay behind or something.
Yeah, that's entirely possible.
Do people, so everyone comes home with you that goes, right?
Unless they arrange it specifically with their parents for their parents to meet them before the end of the trip or at the end of the trip to stay longer for a family vacation.
And who does that handoff?
That would be us as a whole. One person can't vary
You wouldn't leave
from the
someone in an
itinerary.
airport because you leave and then their parents are supposed to be flying in like 4 hours later or something, right?
We would try our best to make arrangements with the parents for them to get an earlier flight if that's going to be the case. The only other possibility might be that our tour guide that's provided by the company might stay behind and accompany them until the handoff. And that one person who's an Explorica employee is trained, vetted, verified, etc. And that would be the only scenario where I could see not making the handoff myself as part of the whole group.
My only concern is because I've had, and I'm aware of experiences where other families have gone, and it's not been through a school program at all, but leaving a student with a trained, person. Often these individuals are not much older. The travel agents, the people that are traveling with you as a group often are in their early 20s or something, and their idea of what supervision means until that handoff is complete can be very different from what ours would be, as a school system. So my preference would be that we know that the students are with you. If there's going to be arrangements that the parents are, there, they can come in a day in advance if they want and tour themselves
that would
around.
be preferred in any case.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I will definitely put my foot down then.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I mean, I'm only one voice, but that's where I would be.
No. I think that makes sense. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, no, I definitely would feel more comfortable knowing that if you can arrange it, that the parents come in a day prior in case there's a delay in a plane, and then the whole team. I don't want.
Sure, happy
I don't
to.
want them left behind.
Absolutely. There hasn't been any expression up to this point from any people who have expressed interest that they want to stay behind or that their families are coming at the end. So, but should they do so, I will make it explicit and upfront from the very beginning that they are to arrive before the end of the trip so that it doesn't cause any safety or travel concerns.
Kevin, did you have something to say?
I don't.
Oh, okay. Anyone else? One thing I would, and maybe I'm just kind of old school, so I apologize. If in fact we have our gender ratio become that it's more females, significantly more females than males, and we have a 3 female chaperone ratio to potentially a 5, let's try to get, I think I would like, and because it's an overnight stay, and maybe just keep a little bit more proportionate in terms of checking in or being able to maybe stay in the rooms, or if someone needs extra help through the night, just a little bit more reflection of gender balance.
Happy to.
With the chaperones, and like I said, maybe that's old school. I don't know, but
I think it's
and
wise.
that's only dictated by what your demographics are in the group that actually signs up. But just it doesn't have to be 1 for 1, but just mirroring it a little bit, and then. What I would ask is that it's great. First of all, I hate to issue spot, and then this is all really exciting, and it's so exciting that just making sure that, and I think you're already doing it even by being here, is that it's getting a wide scattershot advertisement, not just people who are kind of in the loop, who may kind of have their ear to the ground. Sometimes these things you need to just sort of pick up on one kid who might not be the person, and then it will fly, oh, it's cool to go. And so this is, because it's an exciting opportunity, and I really applaud everyone for putting it together. It's great, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I think Sally and Jeff and everyone's been talking about, you know, the global citizen, and so this is a really nice buttressing of that, so I appreciate that. With that, would someone like to make a motion on this field trip request? It's number 4A in our blue notes.
I'll make the motion to approve the field trip request to Europe as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Do you need any more chaperones?
I know, I want to go.
Pack me in.
It's not out of the question.
Itinerary.
Yeah.
However, I don't want it to affect your vote.
Yeah. Yeah. Do that offline. Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Good.
Happy trails.
Thank you
There
so
you go.
much.
Thanks very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
With that, we're going to open it up to site improvement plans. And so, Scott, I think you're our first presenter. Thank you very much.
So, good evening again, and here to talk about from the facilities, human resource, and operations standpoint, the site improvement areas that we're looking at that align with the board goals and the strategic plan. The first item that I have is working with the Facilities Committee and Finance Committee to update our 5-year capital plan. So this isn't about our long-range facilities plan as far as enrollment and buildings and structures. This is about the repairs to the facilities, things like roof repairs, repointing of brick, stair tread replacement, tile replacement. So we'd like to work on that and create that capital plan. We already have it, but work with facilities and finance, and that way everybody knows what's behind that plan and get the buy-in into the projects that we need to do to maintain our facilities. The other area would be conduct a space study of the campus, and that ties directly with facilities, and actually the meeting that we had today where we talked about working with Steve Blatt and doing a study on the entire campus based on our enrollments at MIW and the space needs across the district. So, and our timeline on that from this morning's meeting was looking at something in January to be able to bring to the board. The other area is just oversight of the Performing Arts Center construction. I work with the superintendent as the owner's rep on this project, and it'll consume a tremendous amount of our time. But that's an area that, we want a successful construction project, and that's the other area of the plan. So I have 3 very short areas along with the other things that we do on a daily basis. I don't know if anybody wants to ask any questions.
Just one thing, and it caught my ear in terms of timing. The space study, the presentation in January will be the preliminary.
That's a preliminary
rollout.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, rollout.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, and then and the options we'll have, hopefully coming out of that meeting, we'll have several options to discuss.
Super.
Okay?
Thank you.
That's it.
Does anyone have any other questions? Good? Okay, great.
Okay, so I actually get to represent both Sally and I in this area. For the last few years, Sally and I have really begun to lock arms around instructional support for all learners. Sally's title has changed this year to be about academic services, as you guys know. So we have a shared SIP in the areas of supporting all of our learners in seamless instruction. And the 3 specific objectives that we're looking at are around RTI, or response to intervention, K through 12, and really looking at adopting a district-wide system of supports for our students. So regardless what their need is, we support them. The second area, which we began really discussing last year with staff, is around the idea of non-categorical supports for students. And this really intertwines with both IEP world as well as RTI world. So if a student needs some sort of research-based instruction, that they're not required to be on an IEP to get that instruction. They can get it through a response to intervention, and we're building capacity and building resources for our staff with research-based tools in literacy, as well as beginning to really do more research and professional development in math and writing for students. So looking at reading, writing, math, and then also building support in both response to intervention and through non-categorical supports for students whose behavior is impacting their learning or the learning of others. And then the last area, well, it's a little bit more specific to instructional support. Sally's continued to lock arms around the support, is really just continuing to work on our medical plans for our Section 504. We've made great progress, but it has been a little slower than I would have liked over the last couple of years, and we still have some work to do around transferring those health plans onto medical 504s and really monitoring the number of 504 evaluations that we're doing over the course of the year. So those three areas, while Sally has another SIP, really hit our instructional support and academic services for all learners, and it really made sense, rather than us both writing those areas down on a SIP, for us to have a shared SIP in terms of the vision for the district around supporting our learners.
Does anyone have any thoughts, especially, I know if, for people who are new to the board, if some of the acronyms or things are, just raise your hand and just call out. And you know what, I probably have the same question, I'm just kind of bluffing. So.
Well, I have a question. What exactly is a 504 medical plan?
Yeah. So Section 504 is an accommodation law for equal access to our education, and students can have either an academic plan or a medical plan. So a student who, for example, a really simple example is a student who has asthma and needs access to their inhaler during their school day, they would qualify as having a medical 504 plan because we needed to provide them equal access. They can't participate in school if they don't have that inhaler. There are certainly more complicated examples as well of our students who struggle with more involved medical needs. You can also have a student who required an academic 504, for example, if they had attention deficit disorder and needed, to not sit close to that blower that's blowing behind me right now because that's distracting me when my inattention. I need to sit someplace in the classroom that I'm more focused on the teacher and not distracted by that mental health condition.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Can I just make a comment? I think these things we can't underestimate them. I feel like we're doing such wraparound tight work on this, and it's a lot of work. I mean, I've just gotten a taste of what a 504 plan for an asthma inhaler is, and it's a lot of resources on the back end. I feel like all of these three things are an iceberg, and what even the board sees is just the tip. What the administrators are doing is this huge underwater iceberg, so to speak. And I think it's what sets us apart, especially in our elementary levels. So, kudos to everybody that does so much with these, three categories. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I think that's really important. There is a lot of back work that happens, and then what's sort of on the surface is this small amount. And I feel really fortunate that I have a partner in crime for that work in terms of, it doesn't matter what a student's label is, we're going to get them what they need, and we're going to do the heavy lifting to make that happen. And I think that it's exciting. Well, there's three indicators. It's a huge amount of work, and it's exciting that we're able to do that in a manner that just looks at students and what they need.
Yeah, my other question was, because I feel like that is so important, and you are, even if somebody doesn't qualify for the RTI or the IEP, we're catching them if they're not knowing their letters or numbers in kindergarten. Is there a way that we could label that in the district?
So we're terming it non-categorical supports. That's sort of our cliched term that we made up, right? But we like it, and
it's an acronym,
right? We could probably make an acronym for it. We're really trying to talk about breaking down the walls and having it not have to be labeled a certain plan. So you don't have to be on an IEP to get a research-based reading intervention any longer, right? Or you don't have to be on a 504 plan to get some sort of accommodation you need. You come to us, teacher, with a profile of a student who's struggling, and let's talk about how we're going to help that kiddo, and then we'll figure out which paperwork it needs to go on legally and how we can best support that, but we need to get the student what they need in the meantime. So the only term we have so far is non-categorical, and it's starting to get a little traction.
Great, thank you.
I would just add that I look at these and say, okay, number one, number two, we have over 2,000 students. So when you say we're going to have a response to intervention and adopt a district-wide model so that any of our students who need any additional supports outside the classroom to thrive academically are going to get that, that's over 2,000 kids and growing. And, that's, and that's one, So that's, I know that's Kate's point exactly, which is the goal seems, a simple, 5-word goal, and yet that's the implementation of that goal is huge. So that the public needs to be aware of that. And then it's true. I can think of I can't think of any child that hasn't at one time or another, or student needed some additional service or approach. And maybe it was for a week, maybe it was for a month, maybe it was around, a single topic or something. So I like the non-categorical approach to services model. And I think that's K-12. If we can really accomplish that, then we are touching every kid every day in a very positive way that's unique. And that's, it seems like it always been a goal, and now it seems like it might be in reach. So kudos to the two of you for doing that.
Thank you.
And your staff. I don't mean just the two of you. Susie, all,
Any other thoughts on that?
I think, too, the more we talk about this and we use different labels versus a parent gets a note home and, your son needs a little extra help, and it's like, oh my gosh, well, Johnny next to him needs help in something else, and Sally needs a little help over here for a week. And so I think the more we're talking about these in not sort of special education terms, but much broader, I think is, I'm hoping to see those 504 medical plans, which I know it's not a reflection on anything the two of you are doing, but that's an example of where education for parents is really important. And I know that's where the rub is. So I think the more we talk about these non-categorical approaches to basically, we want to give everybody the best opportunity to succeed. And this is how this is the jargon we're using because, you're educators. But other than that, that's really what we're trying to do. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I echo what Vicki says. I mean, you guys are doing such great work, and it's really about confirming and not, because I think you do a great communication but confirming the availability of these services and the accessibility, and really that it is taking it out of that it's even just the nomenclature of it being a true problem or an intractable problem, or, it's more everyone in life, we ebb and we flow, and we have different strengths and we have different weaknesses, and it's just, I think it's really laudable to recognize that, and even to teach students and their family that those individual areas that need shoring up, it's good to recognize and take them on. So this is really great, and thank you very much for that. Any other comments on that? Okay.
Thank you. So
Thank
Sally
you
has
very much.
one more.
All right, Sal.
Just need a little help with my sleep settings. The third site improvement plan is one that comes more under my office directly. And I think you've already heard about this from each of our schools, because one of the things that is really exciting that we are doing now with Jeff's leadership and our strategic plan is the district sets the direction and we work together in a coordinated fashion on it. And so I am just thrilled that it's the right time for us to be working on an ongoing project where we map out and have clear articulation of our learning progressions for students. By that I mean from kindergarten through 12th grade, what is the social studies they're going to learn? What is the English they're going to learn? How do we put this all in one place? And, it gives me goosebumps even to talk about it. What will happen when we can see cross grade levels, our intentional learning outcomes in those assessments, and start talking to each other with that in mind? So it's an exciting project. It started last spring. It'll be completed this spring as an initial draft. And then from here on, the care and feeding of what is our articulated plan for learning, and is it aligned? Could it be improved? Is it tight? What are we doing? It's just going to be an exciting time for us to be able to be much more thoughtful about the learning outcomes, because one of the cool things about education is that instruction works. And the things that we are teaching kids, they learn. And so our work is to decide what are those very best and most powerful things to be doing. And working together, we will have a better viewpoint and a better understanding, each of us in our individual roles. So that is work underway, and Jeff kicked off the year with it, and each school has embraced it. And this is just going to be one of those lifelong habits from here on in. The second goal area is one that we have been working on over time, and it's where we called it our assessment audit. Last year, we started the work with an inventorying of all the assessments in our schools that we administer to students. This year and leading into next year, I think this really might take us the time it takes us, because one, we have to really come to a shared understanding of what is the purpose of this assessment, how does it relate to the state goals of proficiency levels by grade level, how are our assessments that we're giving on the inside of our district predicting student performance or aligned with other measures of proficiency outside the district, and what do we think are the most essential assessments that ought to be going on for students that are the kind of assessments that they call obtrusive or stop the learning. There's a lot of wonderful assessment you can do while students are learning. But I think the other part where we're going to take our time with this is really also to listen to the Wellness Committee. Because being really clear about how much assessment we want in a student's life, and how clear we should be about the essential purpose, and asking ourselves how much is too much, is part of the work that, it is going to be our ongoing work. But at this point in time, we've completed the inventorying part of our assessment work. We have, the administrators are working to bring in an expert this year to really help us to analyze and study our data and think about our assessments as thoughtfully as possible. And we think that from this type of a focus and the signaling that we ought to be really thoughtful. What's that assessment for? Is this the highest and best use of instructional time? How will this assessment advance learning? When we complete this work, or at least our initial attempt at it, we should be able to stand up, show you our assessment collections, and explain exactly why each assessment is included and how much time we're taking from students for assessment practices. So we've started with a new state test. This is the first year where we're really getting information back in a timely fashion. Our focus for this year is to start with a state test, unpack it, and really be concrete and clear about what's being asked of students, and continue with this analysis work. So those are the two goal areas that they're right from the strategic plan. And I'm just really excited to be part of it.
Any follow-up?
I'd love to. Only because you were so excited over there. It's a little bit contagious. Just a couple things, Sally. It is unbelievably exciting on a couple different levels. That fact that it's what you're driving toward with the assessments, rather than that feeling that a lot of people have, kids as well as parents, that we're doing assessments for the sake of the assessments. I think that clarifies that so well. And then taking the curriculum and helping people to see where they're going and where it's like that mall at the map, map at the mall.
Yep.
You're here, and this is where you can go. I think that's really exciting. The one challenge that I think that we could have is continuing to build that narrative for parents that begins on that very first day of school each year, to lay it out in the way that you did, because it will help people understand a lot better where their kids are going and what they'll be experiencing.
Thank you. I love the notion of a narrative, and I do think that unless people have heard in a way that makes sense to them, we still have work to do.
Yeah, you know, what jumped out on that last section, and thank God, my new friends over here were asking the questions that were on my mind and Gigi's.
Yeah.
We talk in jargon so many times, and we get lost in it. And I do think it's an opportunity where, as we break those down, people will feel a lot more comfort in what their kids are doing.
Yeah. And I would just say that instruction works. We know that when we teach kids, they learn. We want to be really thoughtful about the times that we interrupt the learning for assessment, and we want to be able to explain clearly why that was an important step.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
I have sort of a detailed, like very specific question.
Good.
Will there be anywhere telling freshmen sort of the paths they can take as far as, you know, you have to take algebra this year to take this science next year? Will that be expressed in this plan?
I think that already exists. The high school worked a couple years ago to talk and map out, I think they called them flow charts or progressions by subject area. Now, things change, but I do think that if we look in the course catalog, that was how we asked our departments to think about representing courses. But Madeline, I think there's another question back to Kevin's idea of a narrative. I wonder about working with kids to see if we could make those progressions or those flow charts as useful and as clear as possible. So if you have any time, I'd be happy to talk to you about what does exist and ask if there's a thought that you have for republishing or saying differently, because obviously, you know, you've gotten this far doing very well without looking at that, but other kids might really, we want to make sure they do know those things. So we can do better on the articulation, but I think it exists. Oh, sorry about that, Julie. Okay. So I won't forget if you won't forget.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is, you have heard, the board has heard, 8 out of 9 site improvement plans that have been presented over the last few weeks. We have one more to go, which is technology, and I believe that's your next meeting, and that will conclude that. We've been doing this every year that we've had a strategic plan, so this is the 3rd time, I believe, that we have shared each school and department's site improvement plan. The reason we do that is to show the alignment between the district's strategic plan, the work that's done in the schools and the departments, and from there, our administrators help our teachers and our staff align their goals as well. And so we're trying to show this continuous alignment of the work that we do, and a lot of the work that Scott, Julie, and Sally do in particular really dovetails with and kind of threads through all the work in the schools and other departments as well in the district. So the strategic plan is a critical path for us, and the work that you're seeing up here that they have put up here is only obviously a fraction of the work that really gets done. This is the work that we're highlighting. This is the work that we're hyper-focused on during a particular year, and each year that SIP is tweaked or changed in order to highlight what is the most necessary areas for the district, school, or department.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks. Would you care to embark upon your report?
I care to.
I care if you do too.
Thank you. Well, I don't have to tell many of you, today we had our official groundbreaking ceremony for the Performing Arts Center. Wonderful ceremony, great weather we had nearly 200 students, and I want to thank the Performing Arts Department, that includes our music and our drama programs, for coordinating all of our students and singing and doing a reading, a dramatic reading as well, for choral and band. So we had students participating across the grades, elementary school through high school, and we had approximately between 300 and 400 people that attended this event. So we really are looking forward to it. Construction for the Performing Arts Center is on schedule. Later this week, I believe Thursday, they will begin the process of installing the foundation, which will take weeks to complete. It's a large building, but it will start on Thursday. Along with the construction of the foundation, also will come the fill that will surround the building, and we have to fill in a lot of areas in order to support the Performing Arts Center foundation. So all that work will begin later this week, and I think it's going to start to take shape and be very exciting. We received our ACT scores, and if you want to know what ACT stands for, it doesn't stand for anything, okay? It actually is just ACT. It did stand for something years and years and years ago, and they decided they didn't care to do that, and it's just like SAT. They just decided that it's ACT. So we received our ACT scores again, and they're above average. Again, only a fraction of our students go ahead and take the ACT scores, but it's yet another indicator. For college level coursework, 65% of our tested high school students are ready for the rigor of college courses, and that compares to 46% in Maine. So we're way above the state average. And that includes 100% of our students are ready for English composition. Joan, that must be good news for you to know that. 71% are prepared for algebra, 82% for social science, and 76% for biology. On the ACT scores. So those are good numbers, and we are pretty consistent each year on the ACT scores. I'd like to congratulate the Greeley sailing team. The board, about a year ago, I believe, sanctioned the beginning of a sailing team for Greeley. And in their first inaugural year as an officially recognized team, they came in first place in the Clipper Regatta on September 23rd. So we were very proud of them. They've been sailing for a while, but this was their first year as an official Greeley sailing team. So I want to thank the board for recognizing and sanctioning that team. So, ready for proficiency?
I am so psyched.
Oh, good. This is my next proficiency primer. So if you remember last meeting, we started talking about proficiency-based education, and this one is around assessment. So assessments, which tests, quizzes, projects, should have a direct relationship to the standards that are taught. So in a proficiency-based system, we are lining our assessments up to what we say we should be teaching. So that's very critical. And it may sound like, well, yeah, of course you would do that, but I think if we all remember back to when we were in school, sometimes the test didn't have a whole lot to do with what we were taught, or it was kind of a surprise. And today we know proficiency-based education and good education tells us that we should tell kids what they're going to learn, and then we should assess them on what we teach them. And hopefully they will learn. And as Sally said, it really works if we do the right things. Kids should do well and then we provide additional support if they don't do well. But we should give them a fair shot and actually assess what we say we're going to be learning about. So it shouldn't be that gotcha. Also, like many of us who are in school, many of us are in the same generation, there was that bell curve, if many of you remember the bell curve. So only some students could get an A, only some could get a B, a big group got a C, and a smaller group got a D or even worse than that. And I'm sure none of us do that, right? So in proficiency-based education, there are no bell curves. The bell curve, you can just throw it out the window. It's all about standards and measuring your learning against a standard and not against how many kids in a particular class or grade level or in a standardized test should be doing well or not well. And that is true learning instead of the bell curve. So assessments can either be formative or they can be summative. And I always think summative is easy to remember because it's a summary. It's a summary at the end of learning. Basically, you've explained what you think students should learn. You've assessed them at the end on what the summary of their learning is and how they are making progress towards that learning target. And formative assessments are assessments that are completed basically along the way. And they're kind of check-ins. A teacher will check in and give a formative assessment and see how a student is doing. And those might be your traditional quizzes or basically even a thumbs up or thumbs down on something that's being taught in that moment in real time. So more and more of our teachers are moving in that direction towards using formative and summative assessments and matching them to what is being taught. And then reteaching. Reteaching or providing extra challenges is also part of proficiency. And based on the assessment, we are now moving in the direction of if a student isn't doing well in assessment, instead of moving on, well, maybe it's time for them to get additional support as well. So that is your assessment snapshot for proficiency-based education. And if you'd like to learn more, it will be in my blog tomorrow or the next day this week. I also like to say the Cumberland Climate Action Team has reviewed our energy bills and has determined that through the district's efforts to convert to natural gas, sizable energy projects that the district has completed or is completing, electric charging stations for vehicles, purchasing of energy RECs, we have, after they've reviewed all the bills that we provided, for energy conservation, we found a 40% reduction in the carbon footprint in our district from 2 or 3 years ago when we started tracking this.
It's amazing.
So that's a lot to be said, and I'd like to thank the Cumberland Climate Action Team for working with us on that and also doing all that auditing for us. But that's huge, and that's kind of what we thought was going to happen, but we didn't know until we actually audited it. So all of those things that the board has been supporting are starting to pay off, which is really, really great. I'd like to put a plug in for our community dialogue, which will be held on Thursday, November 9th, 5:30 to 8:30. Dinner will be provided in the Greeley Middle School gym, and this is our kickoff event for the strategic plan, the next strategic plan, because at the end of this year, we are going to retire in June the current strategic plan, and we, of course, need a new strategic plan in its place. So this event will basically be the kickoff to get the community's dialogue around key issues of importance to be placed in the next plan. And finally, and Julie's going to help me with this part of it, we'd like to give the board an update in the public on pre-kindergarten. And this is just a quick update, but I think it's important. The state has now signaled that they will be introducing a bill into the legislature with the governor's support for the education of 3- and 4-year-olds who are identified with special education needs to now be educated in the public schools and not through Child Development Services, which is a branch of the State Department of Education. I'm sorry, it's its own entity. So at this point, this change in service delivery could have a substantial impact on all districts in the state of Maine. And I've asked Julie if she would just talk a little bit more about it.
Sure. So I think I'm just going to give an overview because we have a board workshop coming up shortly where we're going to really delve into pre-K. And we have a lot to discuss at that realm. But I think a couple of things that Jeff and I and Sally really wanted to, and Susie really wanted to highlight for the board was, well, we're really committed to early intervention and programming for all learners. And while it's really the right thing for students to pick up our 3- and 4-year-olds, there does not appear to be in this legislation very clear vision around structure or financial support around how to do that. And there's a pretty substantial impact on our school district on so many levels. I mean, the first that come to mind are just sort of space, right, and transportation, and what does that look like, and staffing, but there's also that just delves down really deep, which are all things that we'll delve into more at the board level. But there is pretty substantial impacts, and I think that means that we need to do some thoughtful thinking about whether or not we're moving forward with the task force recommendation that we had made around a 16-room preschool, right, for one class that was going to be really cozy with 16 kids and really exciting. This is a substantial legislation that would change that data that we didn't have when that task force was meeting to really think thoughtfully about what made sense for our community.
We just got this information a couple weeks ago. It had been kind of out there, but Child Development Services is in debt. It's basically in the red and has been in the red for a while. So part of it is a financial situation. The other part is I was at a regional meeting with superintendents from all of the New England states, and they were saying we've been doing 3 and 4-year-old education of 3 and 4-year-olds universally for years. Maine, you just need to get with the program is basically the message that another superintendent from Maine and I heard very loud and clear. They were being nice about it, but basically like, yeah, we've been doing this for a long time. You guys got to get on the bandwagon here, and it makes sense for kids. It does make sense for kids. I think our only caution and worry is, and this is from all superintendents in Maine right now, what does this look like, and what's the implementation timeline? What kind of resources are we going to need? And what exactly does this mean? There are a lot of questions that have been answered by the Department of Education. We're being told the legislation will be introduced in January in the short session of the legislature, and that it's being pushed very hard by the governor, by the commissioner, and by many members of the legislature.
And Jeff, I think the only other really important point in terms of time frame is that we have been told there are 9 CDS sites in the state of Maine, and that the first 5 are going to close for this coming school year, so that there would be 5 of the 9 sites will close the first year, and the additional 4 will close after that. Those 5 sites have not been named yet, although there are rumors about which part of the state they fall into, and our part happens to be those rumors, but we don't know that for sure yet. But that's how quickly they're intending that this implementation rollout is, that by the September start of next school year, we would really be adopting our 3 and 4-year-olds in terms of the CDS Child Development Services.
One thing that I hope, I know we're going to workshop that, but that I'm just particularly interested in is also if we do this, while I understand, the low-hanging fruit is going to be relatively, the mandate will be what is obviously the first thing we have to address in terms of special ed children, but is then also the entrance ramp onto regular education and the academic benefit and the developmental benefit also for not only the special ed children to be with the regular ed, but that the regular ed are also with the special ed, as opposed to, because it's not as though special ed is also just like one finite face in terms of how it manifests. And so, I mean, I get a little concerned about sort of this, little separate enclave early on, while I understand the services, but in terms of just really becoming that grade, becoming an integrated whole. So
Can't really be a standalone service for a lot of reasons. I mean, when you think special education, many people think about our students who are self-contained and have substantial needs, but there's also the bulk of the students are like speech and language only students who get like 30 minutes a week of speech. They're not going to come. I mean, their least restrictive environment isn't a special ed setting. Their least restrictive environment is a preschool, right?
Right.
And so unless there's a universal pre-K program for all 3 and 4-year-olds, I mean, there are very few students that we adopt every year into our K that are actually that level of special education that they require a self-contained classroom. So that's a lot of what we've been working on for the BIRD workshop, is to really look at what is least restrictive for our students. How do we develop models that look like that? But I think there's sort of 2 paths. One is, how do we manage the legislation and provide feedback to that legislation as it goes through the session, which is critically important. Right. And how do we plan for if there needs to be an implementation in September? That's substantial budget implications and heavy lifting in terms of work in order to ensure that we're ready for those kiddos at that time frame.
And that's the piece that I really want us to try to address in part during the workshop, is because it's moving rapidly, is what's going to be our board's response to the legislation. Are we going to have, a unified, a letter that we send? Are we going to be growing up and testifying? Are we going to be coordinating with other districts and, developing some response? Because, a piece of legislation is fine, but it's getting a little difficult the number of pieces of legislation that get cranked out that have no funds attached to them.
This is a
Absolutely no
substantial one.
funds. I know, and I would think that our Commissioner of Education, given his background and experience and love for all of us here in MSAD 51, would, sitting from on our side of the desk and having to talk about unfunded mandates, should
this
be
has a
open to that discussion with us.
This has a substantial implication, and one that, the reason that I had stayed for Jeff's superintendent update is because, while I think from a regular ed perspective, there's a substantial impact, from a special ed perspective, there's even more, because you really have to think about the laws and regulations around those 3 and 4-year-olds and how to make program decisions and staffing decisions around that. And it's not as easy as we adopt this many kids each year, so those are the number of students that we're now responsible for. And you're right. It's a very substantial piece of legislation that doesn't yet have a vision around an infrastructure to support that financially. And so, while it's the right thing for students and nobody's denying that, there needs to be work done to
Right,
make
no
that
district can
happen.
get there from just the physical standpoint alone by next September.
Right. Thank you to our facilities queue, but right.
That's
It's irresponsible.
It is.
For them to think that this is possible.
Yeah. So I think we'll be talking a lot more about it
I
in the
do too.
workshop,
I think
but just
so
some
too.
signaling that I'm not sure the conversation that the workshop was initially designed for is going to be the same conversation as we're going to be having now, given the legislation. Right, Jeff?
Right.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And I will say that the Cumberland County superintendents this is a major topic that we're discussing right now in our county meetings. And we're continuing to do just the same things that Karen mentioned. How do we advocate, first of all, that this is we're not debating, I don't think anybody's debating that this is a bad thing. I think having 3 and 4-year-olds and educating kids in the public school system can be very positive, but how are we doing it, and what is the approach and the implementation timeline? Julie and I are meeting with Representative Deno and Senator Breen together later this week, and we are discussing only this legislation and how it needs to be thoughtful and how it needs to be handled carefully. And they are all ears and would like to talk to us about what we're thinking and where we think we're going to be going with this, and how can they help when that legislation is introduced. So they're being very proactive, and I want to thank both of them for coming and meeting with us this week. So
Great. All right, thank you. I don't think there's any public comment. So let's go ahead and we'll roll out committee reports. Karen, Finance, you want to go ahead?
Yep. I had it all up here now. Okay, so the
Thank you.
finance. I'm gonna have to do it this way because I've lost it. Here we go. The Finance Committee met on the 19th, and basically it was our first meeting of the year, so we did a little bit of a finance primer on what it's like to be on the Finance Committee and what to expect. We will be doing, and Scott was nice enough to bring us through that. We will be doing quarterly general fund updates. Our first one will be at the second meeting in October. We talked about lease purchases and what they're typically used for, and what we might be seeing along those lines this year. We talked about the Performing Arts Center and how the softening of the debt would occur over time, and as the debt for the Performing Arts Center was brought on. And that document that we used during the Performing Arts Center discussions last year was shared with everyone. Our audit is complete, and the audit will be, they're done with their work, Barry and Talbot, but they'll be presenting the audit to Scott and Jeff, and we'll probably be looking at it in December at the Finance Committee meeting. I'll let you all know specifically when. We also are developing a budget calendar, obviously based on when the referendum is, and then backing it up from there to the date that Jeff wants to be able to roll the budget out in time to have a certain number of public hearings on the budget, et cetera. So that's fun work that's ahead of us. We also talked, as Scott did, we've already brought up the 5-year capital plan and the space studies, and in fact, my colleague over here, Mike, and I have already talked about a joint meeting in January between the Finance Committee and the Facilities Committee to talk about that. The last thing is that we recently had to go out for additional funds to fund the development of the building of the Performing Arts Center. So we went out for another bond anticipation note for the PAC, and part of our profile was that our district had very modest debt of 8.3% of our expenditures, and that 69% of our debt will be declining over the next 10 years. Our profile was also noted for the strengthened reserves and its strategic plan. The strategic plan is something that, like Standard & Poor's looks for when they're looking to give determine your rating. Our capital plan and our capital projects were also a plus for us as a district and identified as a strength in our profile, as well as the fact that we maintain a strong fund balance. And so those are all just good things for the board to know, that it does benefit us when we need to go out, as we've discussed in the past, and bond anything. And based on that, the rating that our district received was the highest short-term rating you could receive from Standard & Poor's of 1+. And that affirms our AA+ rating from Standard & Poor's, which is our long-term debt or bond rating. So those are just, did I say that all right? Did I leave anything out there, Scott?
Perfect.
Okay. So, just actually two more little things that they've talked about, which also gets talked about in our audit, is that our approach to budgeting, which is a zero-based approach, where we basically zero out everyone's budget from last year and say to our district leadership team, talk to us about what you need this year and what we're funding, and also our ability to track our budget to actuals and not only our ability, but the fact that we do that on a regular basis and present that as well, were two other highlights. So that's, I think I've covered it all. So I just want to, we should, obviously it's fiscal management or prudent fiscal management that got us into this, and position, and past boards have worked with Scott and Jeff. Future boards will continue to work with Scott and Jeff. And it's important for us all as board members to understand the basis for why we build the capital reserves, we build the fund balance, and things like that. So
Great. Well,
that's all I got.
That's a good report. I might take things out of order because you referenced, I think it might be a good segue. Mike, why don't you go ahead right into facilities? And then I'll circle back up, just because the finance, so I'm just keeping you on your toes. So.
Understood.
Yep.
This morning, the Facilities Committee met for the first time this year. We collaborated to identify the time that worked for most people most of the time. We're going to be connecting on the first Monday of each month at 9 a.m. The one exception to that is Monday, January 1st. In recognition of the holiday, and because we didn't want Scott to have to come in that day. It's probably going to snow based upon earlier reports. We're actually going to convene on the 2nd and do sort of a joint mid-year check-in with the Finance Committee. There's a lot of things that we're undertaking over the next year that will definitely have some overlap with the financial components, including the 5-year capital plan. Really strong group. Hit the ground running this morning. Already met with Steve Blatt, making some plans as it relates to the space study, just conducting an inventory of what's currently available for space in the district and how it's currently being used, and then identifying what our future and long-term needs are going to be. And then this afternoon, I actually got the whole board out there with shovels and started digging a hole for a Performing Arts Center. So I think it's really going to come together. It's a good team.
You're building a building.
I know. So.
Okay, well then, well, thank you for that, and thanks for getting. It really actually was a really great ceremony, and I don't know if I. Thanks also to Ashley Caswell for putting that together. It was really nice, and so she's not here, but Ashley Caswell on the ether, you're getting a thank you. Why don't we go ahead to curriculum? Do you want to, is that you, Karen?
That's Vicki and I, and actually we met, and then we're going to meet with, curriculum's going to be, well, actually, one of the things we need to look at is preschool. So there's a number of items like the STEM programming, preschool, and so on. So I think we're just going to try to meet probably more quarterly. I don't think it's a monthly meeting. The bulk of the work was done for proficiency, getting ready for proficiency. But there's a number of items, STEM, preschool, and sort of looking at the curriculum mapping that's been done. And these were all quick notes between Sally and I this evening, but we'll be adding to that. So.
And so when you say you're going to meet quarterly, when would be your next meeting-ish?
Actually, we haven't had a full meeting yet. We've been, so we are.
You're planning?
I'll report back, or Vicki will report back next meeting on that actual calendar.
Well, I will eagerly await.
Vicki, do you have anything else to add?
No, the only thing I would add is that we talked about the website, the district website, the section on curriculum, to make sure that it's up to date with information, particularly with respect to proficiency-based diplomas and.
Nice. All right. Well, good. Well, we look forward to hearing from you. Scott, negotiations, little, anything you can share on that?
Nothing to add at this time.
All right. Well, then we've already taken care of facilities. I'm going to bounce on over to Kevin with strategic planning.
Thank you. So we had our first session, I guess it was last week on the 25th. And the group that came together is kind of an exciting group. You have a mix of board members, a number of faculty members, administration, and some spectacular people from the community. And we began really with a discussion about what we're driving toward, or what everybody in that committee would determine to be a great outcome. And there was an enormous amount of passion, people that are interested in providing a legacy to the community, to the students, to everybody involved. And it's a great group to be part of. We spent some time getting an overview from the superintendent on the purpose and direction of the strategic plan, and what was really exciting is the work that you've done and the previous committee did to get to the point that we are, because it's a strategic plan that's endured and is part of every meeting. We began the work talking about some critical dates and where we're driving toward. The first big date that we have is November 9th, and that is the community dialogue session. And we began to discuss a number of different directions that we could go in terms of what the construct of that meeting would be and what the attendee list would look like, and came to the determination that while we could debate it for many, many hours, a subcommittee may accelerate our results. And so 2 subcommittees were formed. One of them is focusing on the stakeholder list to make sure that we get the right people within that room. The determination of how we can make sure that it is a truly additive process and the invitations will get out. And then the second piece was looking at the session itself and having the correct construct that will encourage people's participation, as well as making sure that folks that don't generally gravitate to the front of a group will be able to be heard fully. That's where we are. Minutes will be going out very shortly. The next meeting date is October 23rd at 4:30 at Mabel I. Wilson.
Great. Okay. Any questions for Kevin? All right, moving along. I'm going to go ahead and ask students to report, or student to report, and then we'll do policy both first and second read, and then we'll take it from there. Anything for us?
I have a good report.
Great.
PSATs are next week, so we're getting ready for that, along with normal classwork. And we're getting used to the PAC construction already. They've already started working on it a little bit, and so we're getting used to that, which is exciting. And then we're also working on recruiting other students for the dinner on November 9th.
Oh, great. Okay.
So that's that.
Great. Okay, thank you. Good report. Kate, why don't you take policy?
So you will see 4 policies for first read tonight. I know it might look like policy has worked very quickly this fall, but These are all policies, the first and second read tonight are policies that we worked extensively on last year, and we tied up in the fall. So here they are, the 3 financial policies. Pretty straightforward. You'll notice down under legal references, many of them just had a simple statutory change, as well as just kind of updating and cleaning up the language. Scott would be the authority on those, as he kind of knows our policies financially inside and out. I know he's already answered a few questions on those. Policy JB would be a new policy, transgender student guidelines, and this was a policy that it was just very clear from our administrators and our legal counsel that we needed to implement this year. So those we'll be voting on next meeting. Do you want me to go ahead and do?
Yeah, I mean, does anyone have any, well, let me just say this. I guess if anyone has any immediate thoughts or comments with respect to the first reads, please give them to Kate. If there's, I'm not at all dampening discussion now, but probably for the first read, begin to discuss with Kate, and they can percolate up, okay? All right. Well, yeah, why don't you go ahead and I know I'm taking things a little bit out of order, but why don't we just go ahead and go right to the second read, if
Sure.
that's okay with you.
So we have second read of, I want to say it's 5 policies. Left my blue note somewhere else. No, sorry, 4 policies. No. All right, so we will take this, the first one, on our blue notes. Number 9, items for action. Number B, this is the second reading of GCSB, use of social media by school employees. So I'll make the motion, and then we can have discussion if people would like to do that. So I move to approve policy GCSB, use of school social media use of social media by school employees as presented.
And a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion on that? Are people ready for a vote on that? Okay. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, great. You want to do the same for the next one?
I move to approve policy DBG, budget adoption process as presented.
Okay. Second, please?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Are we ready to vote? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, the next.
I move to approve policy DFA, investments as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll
on
second.
Okay, there we go. And comments? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Great. Next.
I move to approve policy DIF, fixed assets as presented.
I'll second.
Any comments? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Next.
I move to approve policy DN, personal school property disposition.
All in favor?
I'll second that.
Oh, sorry about that. I was on such a roll. Okay, great. Are there any comments on that?
I just have a question.
Sure.
How common is this, Scott? That
It's not common to have anything that's in excess of $5,000. Many times, even if it's under $5,000, we have something like a school bus or something like that that we're disposing of, we'll usually put that out to bid or notification or contact several people who may be interested in it. So it's unusual to have it. One year, we did have a tractor. Kubota tractor that we did have to bid off, and it was over 5,000. So, but it's not that frequent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments? All right, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay. Anything else from policy?
Nope. We will meet before the next school board meeting. You can see the agenda. It's already posted online, as we had to cancel today's meeting, and it will be the same agenda. So anyone who wants to come and share their thoughts is always welcome.
Okay. Now going back, there weren't any communications, right? No, okay. So no communications for minutes takers? No.
I thought we had talked this, I couldn't remember if we had talked about something we were going to bring up, and it's gone now.
Okay, well, I'm going to kill some time with the, yell in if you remember. We need to elect a board delegate to the MSBA Delegate Assembly for October 26th, 2017. Is there any board member who is interested in attending?
I think I'm gonna go.
Would you mind to be our delegate?
I will commit to being the delegate, sure.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Would someone like to designate Kate? Mike?
I'll nominate Kate to be our delegate to the MSBA Delegate Assembly on October 26, 2017.
That's fantastic.
I would second that.
Oh, that's better. Okay, any comments on Kate going? Yeah, everyone resist. Okay, all in favor? There we go. Anyone opposed?
I raise my hand.
Anyone vocally, publicly opposed besides Kate?
Kate. No, and actually, I do have one other thing.
Communication?
Yeah.
Okay, super.
Yeah, I got my wires crossed because I was thinking about it. There is the town of Cumberland is going to be, is looking at proposals about what to do with I think it's a 37-acre lot. And they recently put on their website that they're holding a panel discussion and people should apply to it. You have to live in Cumberland, so but then they're selecting people to, I think they want between 100 and 125 people to participate in like a roundtable discussion about the options that are available for this parcel of property. It includes, I think you saw something in the newspaper about it, includes potentially a senior development, multi-generational development, no development, like just do nothing with the land for now. And I do know that some of the discussion has been around whether or not school enrollment is declining or not, which we all know it is not declining. It is below presently right now where we've been at a high in the past, but we have been seeing steadily increasing enrollment over the last 3 years. And the enrollment study projected that we're going to be back to 2,300. So I just wanted to make sure that all Cumberland representatives were aware of the meeting, and that I think since they're going to select, I would recommend that everybody apply for it. And, because I think it will be important to have at least, 1, 2, 3 representatives from the board there, because I'm sure there will be some discussion or about what is the school's enrollment or what was the enrollment study.
Yeah, I agree. I unfortunately am going to be out of town on business that night, so I can't attend, but I do think it will be important, and we can certainly talk about that and just making sure that in terms of us being, to the extent we have a consistent message in terms of what the enrollment study looks like, whether or not, I think all of us understand that we don't necessarily advocate for bigger or smaller populations. We just serve, that is an objective of ours, to increase or decrease size. The community dictates and we educate the children. So we'll keep ahead with that messaging, and I appreciate that communication.
I think the conversation is a very good one. And
it's a great one.
I don't
Yep.
think, and I think it's, you're right. We're not taking a position, but I think it's going to be important to have accurate information shared.
Yep, definitely. So is there anything else? With that, I will take my favorite motion. Would anyone care to move to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Would anyone like to second that? Vicky will second that. Are there any comments on adjourning? Okay, all in favor? And I hope there's no one opposed. All right, great. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
It was on the website.